7 p.m. local time, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and thank you very much for joining us on Viewpoint on Dbs television. As a follow-up of yesterday's program talking about holiday classes and recreational activities, today we are back again to talk about the effect suspending holiday classes may have on school resumption. And with us, we are still having another teacher. It is the first time that he is joining us. I'm talking of George Lika. He is a teacher at La Perseverance Plus Primary School, and he will be accompanied by Mange Venashus. Good evening to you, George Lika, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Mange Venashus, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to our viewers.
Let us take the first part of the show. Question 1. With the suspension of holiday classes nationwide due to COVID-19, is school resumption in October possible? George, yes or no?
Yes.
It's possible. Mange Venashus?
No.
It's not possible. And question 2. Should a two-shift system be implemented as school prepare to resume?
Yes.
It should. Mange Venashus?
No, Vanessa.
No, it should not. Let us take the debate where our panels will be justifying their point of view. Stay tuned. Once more, you're welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. First question: with the suspension of holiday classes nationwide due to COVID-19, George, you think that school resumption in October is possible?
Yes, it will be possible. Why? Because suspension of holiday classes, I think it has been one-sided because the primary pupils are on holiday classes now. And I would want to think that we shouldn't even use the name holiday classes because we know that holiday classes is always 3 months. And when you look critically, you discover that since March up to today, it's already more than 3 months. So if people are doing whatsoever they're doing now, it's normal because they are already exercising what they were supposed to do. Because when you rest, when you extend rest, it becomes an ill. So I think if that is in October, if the Cameroon government should put things in order, school will resume. Why? Because if you look critically, you discover that the examination classes had to go in for their class for the examination successfully. So meaning that if they could go in for classes successfully and no casualties were recorded, then I think that schools can resume in October. If not that there is something hidden behind. Because if we don't do it our Cameroonian way, when I say this is how, when you look critically, you discover that we have different levels of education, but holiday classes have been suspended in the other part, and other ones are continuously going on or silent. Let's put it that way. When you look, you discover that if things are put in order, because even when we look at the statistics, we discover that a child or a student has not yet died of COVID-19. So meaning that God might be shifting this issue of COVID-19 from our teenagers. So I think if they should keep away this issue of barrier measures or prohibiting education. Yes, they should allow the pupils and students free
to return to school. All right. You earlier said that if government put things in order, returning from school is possible. So what are some of those things that they need to put in order?
Yes, the first thing is trying to reorganize the school year calendar by saying that, okay, if school starts in October, because I think extending to October should be because of these examinations that students as people wrote, that they will be trying to at least correct. And if they should extend to October, they should reorganize, making sure that let it be a 9-month program. Because if something was starting from September to June, it should still start from October and still have a 9-month period, and nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen.
And nothing will happen.
So, did you see that was there any necessity then stopping holiday classes?
Because I am of the primary, and holiday classes has not been stopped. So that story or that
press
release concerning the secondary department
does not apply to the primary.
Yes, it doesn't apply because if student even.
But in your opinion, how do you appreciate it?
I want to say that it is not because they want to prohibit or try to reduce the number of casualties as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Because if you look in, you discover that when students wrote the exam for the number of months that they wrote, there was no student who was recorded COVID-19 positive. So there's something there might be which we don't yet know. But if it is relative to education, you discover that if students could be able to at least pass through the examination period without any problem, then why should we ban them from at least exercising their day classes?
All right. Thank you very much, Lika, for your point of view. Mangeven Ashus, you are taking contrary to what George is saying, that school resumption in October is not possible with the suspension of holiday classes.
Yes, Vanessa, it's just a follow-up from the minister's logic of reasoning. Because her reasoning is simple. We want to curb the spread of COVID-19. Unless, I like what Mr. Lika was saying, he said, except there is something. Except there is something, which this something is, by October, coronavirus would have finished. Because if we are prohibiting holiday classes on the grounds that we want to respect the barrier measures and curb the spread of the pandemic, if we have to go by statistics, they are telling you that we are climbing. They are telling you that the rate of infection is increasing. If you listen to some countries out of Cameroon, out of Africa, especially Western countries, there are possibilities of, a second wave of infection that is coming up. There are possibilities of second wave of lockdowns that have been announced. I take the case of Uganda, for example. When Ugandans, recorded a number of deaths last Sunday, it took their numbers to 15 cases of deaths. And the president is thinking of going back to the second, to announce a second lockdown so as to curb the spread. And their number of infection has climbed. As of Sunday evening, last Sunday evening, they had 1,500 cases. 1,500 cases. And they are programming a lockdown. We have passed 18,000. We have passed 400 mark of deaths in the pandemic. And we have suspended holiday classes because we are afraid that letting the children go for holiday classes, it will, increase the rate of infection. Everything is, what is clear here is the number of students who would go in for holiday classes cannot be the same like the number of students who would go back for normal classes when classes begin by October, which means we have a higher risk in October than what we have now for holiday classes. And if the higher risk will be in October, that's why I say I'm following from the minister's logic of reasoning. It is obvious that when October will come, we will also prolong it, because if we have cancelled holiday classes, we will cancel resumption. We have no assurity, no guarantee that by October, coronavirus would have finished. We have no guarantee. If you listen to the last outing of the Minister of Public Health, he did not tell us that we have reached the peak. Peak of infection, which means we are still climbing. And there are no assurity that by October we would have been descending to say that no, from the trend of things, we can allow children go to school. Yes. So when I look at it, I think that if we suspend it, because the first condition the minister gives is for the sake of COVID-19. If we take COVID-19 as the first pretext, then schools will not resume in October, because we just have 1 month. From August, we have only 1 month, and we would be in October the 5th. So from every indication, I would conclude that schools may not resume, everything being equal, because we are going to follow the same trend. The second thing is, schools will resume in October according to the plan. Schools will be resuming in October. We have students that are at home during this period. And when we send them in October, what are we telling them? Go and be contaminated? Go and spread the virus? Or do we intend that by October it will be a free for all virus that we can share it for everybody? So that is what or as such. Yes, because for now official figures are still that. Remember last week the Prime Minister was very hard, insisting that there is this laxity in the use of face mask insisting that we have not yet reached the peak, insisting that that the virus is still there in our society. And if we follow from that, it means we are still not yet safe. And still not yet safe, schools will not resume in October from the way things look like. So I would rather think that, and the way the government action in handling it is so suspicious. We are talking about the ministries in charge of education. Why should it only be the Minister of Secondary Education that is so concerned about the spread, unless statistics or research has proven that coronavirus spreads only within the age group in this the age group that is in the secondary education? What about primary schools? What about
high schools, universities?
Universities? Yes, that's the question I was asking yesterday, because I wanted to find out why they have not stopped universities are preparing their receipt exams. Primary school are going on with their holiday classes.
I mean, they're mature enough to know that they need to respect barrier measures.
What about primary schools?
Contrary to
what about primary schools? So I would rather think that they should instead have stopped primary school, because if we reason from that way, they should have stopped primary school because they are still too young. They will not understand the respect of barrier measures like those in secondary school. Secondary schools already reach where we're already talking people already
but
between 12 and...
logically, I think that if we want to look at this, we all know that students are prone to obedience rather than the secondary school students. So if university students are mature enough to know that they need to respect barrier measures, the pupils also know that no, we need to respect our teacher. He said we should not intermingle with another person. He said we should wash our hands regularly. They will do that. But you know how difficult it is to control secondary school students.
Vanessa,
we all know how it's difficult with them.
Vanessa, I'm basing my argument on the first clause of the minister's communique, which hinges on the spread of the virus. Asking students not to participate in whole day classes is not confining them. And where are we confining them? In their houses, in their various neighborhoods. Do you know where the child is? And these very students will say they should not go to whole day classes are the very children selling in the markets. What happens to them? Is coronavirus only in schools? So I think that when I say that the manner in which the government is handling it is suspicious, is because they should have said, we don't want to see a child in the market. If the government is so concerned about the children, we don't want to see a child in the market. If we see a child in the market, we are going to arrest the child and the parents will be responsible. We don't want to see children playing in the quarters. We don't want to see children coming for all day classes. You see, the logic, the pattern of reasoning would have been logical. When you stop one activity, allowing others. If I go to the second clause of that communique, they encourage recreational activities. We did not bring about mingling of students or of these children, and you see that the coronavirus will still spread as if nothing is happening. So when I look at it, the suspension of holiday classes as a pretext, to curb the spread of coronavirus, I don't see it.
You don't see a possibility of a school resumption in October?
At all, because we are not certain that this thing started in January. In December, early January, we are already in August, and the cases are increasing. So which means if we continue in that same line, we may go right up to December, still on the rise. Which means by October, we may still see the minister may still come up and say, because of coronavirus, in order to curb the spread of coronavirus, school resumption has been postponed, maybe 2 months, like they did in March, and the possibility of resumption in October are put to question.
George Lika?
Yes, Vanessa, I want to highlight something here, because if you look critically, you discover that when the Cameroon in general was taken unaware about this coronavirus, schools were stopped, and when
schools were stopped around mid-March.
Yes, and when the program came up that we should have a blank year by at least making sure that children should go in for their final exams, everybody started. And at a certain point in time, they had to postpone the dates that they were to write the exams. Mm-hmm. And when you look, discover that the primary sector came first, which their results had already been released. And from there, the secondary are still writing. So you look very keenly, let's look at it that way, you will discover that if the secondary department is prohibiting or stopping holiday classes for now, is showing that the primary already finished. Let the primary start, and then we try. When we talk about time, might be as this month is finishing, the secondary might take over. Because if now the GC all levels will be finishing on the 22nd, and if schools who are that are centers, if they are mingling with the holiday students and those who are writing, I think there will be disorder. So let's see it this way, that the Ministry of Secondary Education has come in now, because it wants to let the students who are writing finish, and then the orders now, when it's finished by September, let's hope by September let the secondary start holiday classes, so that by October school should resume. Because if they should mingle when orders are still writing of the secondary, at least it might be problematic.
All right,
yes, I was laughing.
Are you convinced?
I was laughing because I was forced to conclude that we are living in a situation where we are programming coronavirus, the period at which it can spread and the period at which it cannot spread. But then I think that the minister would have, to be serious, the minister would have instead talk of bringing order in the, not all schools are centers. Why should we deprive schools that are not centers? We should have been talking of bringing order within the educational milieu, such that when they write the exams, the minister would have simply said, we don't want you people to disturb those who are still writing their exams. That would have been normal. But when we bring coronavirus, that's why I said my argument was based on the first clause, to curb the spread of coronavirus and respect barrier measures that are being dictated by the government. And I ask the question, students that go in for holiday classes, they are nothing compared to normal resumption that will come up in October. How are we going to respect barrier measures in October? Unless the minister would have said, stop holiday classes and we do a complete revamp of facility and infrastructure, so as to give room for next academic year by October.
You are just talking about barrier measures coming up in October. And our second question is directly linked to that. Should the two-shift system be implemented as schools prepare to resume? George, I remain with you. Schools to resume. When we are talking about the two-shift, you are in a better position to understand where some pupils or students will be allowed to come in the morning, then later on in the afternoon, another set of students will go to school as well. So we are asking, should it actually be implemented, given that we are long gone from that system of education?
Yes.
I believe that it comes also with difficulties.
Yes.
The classrooms, the number of benches, the number of pupils, and all the resources needed to implement this.
Yes, really, what coronavirus has brought to us is something that we need to do everything possible so that both ends should meet. Because when you look, you discover that education is a food for the soul, especially those youngsters. That if you give room to say that no, they will have a limited number, like in the secondary they are talking of 50 per class. If 50 per class, if the schools we have cannot be able to at least accommodate them, then we are sending some other students or peoples into the street, and they can be a danger or harm to the country. So what I mean is this: if the two shift can at least make sure that a child should be able to assimilate 60%, let us not go up to 100 or 90. If a child can be able to assimilate 60% of what we call education in the north here, I think the two shift should be encouraged, so that all those peoples should be able to attend school and also respect barrier measures. Because the two shift here, objective being that let us have at least 50 per class. I think
because the implementation of the system is to permit the students to respect social distance.
That is it. And if it is that way, because formerly it existed. And I could understood that it existed because we Cameroonians, we used to always rush to where it is cheap. Because it respected now, it used to be respected in our government schools, not in private institutions. Yes, because since education in the public sector is free, parents will always want to send their children there, and that's why the classes are always overcrowded. Now this system used to exist, but if the objective this time around should that those public schools should exist, you have those two shifts, even private, so as to make sure that it should accommodate the people who are really in need of education this 2020-2021 academic year.
Exactly. I'm reading your vision because I thought that government schools can probably cope with this. When we talk of resources, would there be enough teachers to cover all the time schedule from morning to evening?
Yes, madam.
In government schools, it will be possible, but what of lay private schools? Would they be able to cope with it?
The issue in education, as far as Cameroon is concerned, if we talk of lack of teachers, it's just because we want to do it our Cameroonian way, because we have teachers who are flowing out of teacher training schools and are available. What I mean is, if the government wants to at least implement that shift, he should be able to pass out an ultimatum that in the lay private or in the private, this is what it's supposed to be. And if it is that way, if you are a lay private and you are supposed to operate as far as school is concerned,
I believe that many teachers will have to be recruited.
That is it. That is it. To make sure that at least this national cake, which is the education that we need to give our children, let all the children have a bite from.
All right, thank you. We stay with you. Mange Venashusa, you think that it should not be implemented. Why?
Yes, Vanessa, it should not be implemented. Like Mr. Lika was saying, the system existed in Cameroon. It's not a new system. It may be new for those in the northwest and southwest regions. They might not have practiced it, but that was a system that was practiced in the French subsystem of education. Children came to school in the morning and closed by midday. Others come from midday till evening. But when you look at the system itself, the loopholes outweigh the advantages. We are in a crisis period where, like he's saying, we have to do all to surmount the difficulties that this crisis has posed. But we have to look at it. Do we just do things because we want to overcome or challenge coronavirus, and then we don't get the impact of what we are doing? Vanessa, you were a student. Place yourself in their context, that you get up in the morning, we are talking of a situation, a child who is at home. You play around the house, you do things, maybe, okay, you will not play. You do your house chores, watch televisions, and by 12 o'clock you dress and you go to school. What will you learn? Pedagogues will tell us that there are some subjects, you don't just put them anyhow. You have to respect, there are some subjects by nature, they come in the morning for a reason. In the morning, the child still has a fresh memory. It is possible to task that memory than in the afternoon. Everybody knows that in the afternoon, everything, even in our offices, the way you work in the morning is not the same that you work in the afternoon when you come back from break. Imagine a child who gets up in the morning in a context, in an economic situation like Douala, where we are. A child gets up in the morning, goes to the market with the mother or the father, and who sells. By 12 o'clock, you rush home and dress, and you come to school. How settled is the mind of that child to study? How focused is the mind of that child? Or you take a situation where that child gets up in the morning, the parents are out, like we used to do because we are hardly at home. That child plays in the quarter, plays football in the quarter, turns around. By 12 o'clock, that child rushes home, dresses, and rushes to school. What will that child study? What about the case where, since you are not there, how many of those children will forget that they even had to go to school? Because it's already 12 o'clock, you were playing your football in the quarter, and you suddenly discover there's 1 o'clock, you have never come to take a bath to go to school. Many of such cases. We look at you talked about resources. If we take the two-shift system, this teacher who was supposed to teach from 1, geography, you will teach from 1. We're taking a case of government school that have from 1A, B, and C, just that there are some that has up to D. Have government schools with from 1 to from 1D, from 1E even. Now, you are teaching from 1A, B, and C, geography. And what you were supposed to teach for today, Wednesday, you will teach from morning, those who are coming in the morning, and you will continue teaching the very thing in the
afternoon.
What is the output of those in the afternoon shift? Would that teacher still give the same like he gave or she gave in the morning? I think that when you weigh the two, you discover that we are not able to break even. Coronavirus instead has sapped the government of its resources. The economy is completely on a standstill. Not only the government, the parent. How, when we talk of recruiting other teachers, who will take care of them? Who would pay them? With the government, the budget is not even able to handle normal other issues in the country. And we are talking about raising the budget of the ministry or the ministries in charge of education. We know that when we talk of education in Cameroon, the bulk of education lies at the private sector. Will the private proprietors, will they accept to double their staff? Because it means we will have a staff for the morning session and the staff for the evening session. If we decide to say that, okay, we would squeeze the rock out of the rock, the water out of the rock by using the staff strength that we have, which means you will teach the morning shift.
They might end up not being able to sustain the students till the end.
That is what I'm asking. What are we going to have for the second shift? Because if you, besides them giving in, what would these proprietors accept to pay as such? Because most of these teachers, okay, you have 4 hours in the morning and you have 4 hours in the evening. Would they still do so on the same salary? The salary that they are not even paying. Because coronavirus came and most private schools, they are in problems because they are not even paid the teachers. So you think that they will not task these very teachers? You teach in the morning and you teach in the afternoon. How would these teachers prepare for the next day? So I think that it is a challenging situation that we are faced with. And when you weigh the advantages and the disadvantages, you see that it is preferable we start looking at how we can cope with coronavirus with a single shift system than adopting the double shift system, because it will not help us. It will instead plunge us into more problems.
So you are suggesting that we should maintain the single shift system?
That is my opinion, that we should not adopt the 2 shift system.
And that brings us back to the question. When we talk of resources, we equally talk of classrooms.
Of course.
If they have to respect social distancing, 50 people per class.
Of course, Vanessa.
How many benches do we have? Or
Vanessa,
how large
the government,
are the classrooms?
when the government was relaxing these barrier measures, when they were opening up licenses and drinking sports, they said they should not be more than 50. And if you see in that manner of reasoning, when examination classes were resuming, they came back to 20. 24, I think something 24, 27, something like that.
Yes.
But then when you put it, when schools will resume, you now see the task in which the educational sector is. When we put the 2, we are not refusing it. When we put the 2, I think that if you prefer to run the educational system, you to be involved in education, we should adjust like we are adjusting in other fields. You know, churches are now forced to go into
to have several services
because they know that the infrastructure they have cannot accommodate them. That is the church. But with the school, you can go attend mass at 4 o'clock. It has nothing to do. But when it comes to mental activity, we have to be very careful the way we handle it. So that's why I think that even with the resources, we should maintain our single shift system that we had, and then see how to work maybe on our program. We can work on our program. If we were able to stop schools, we can reduce the program. Let us not only think of working on time. Let's reduce the program too and have the essentials. Vanessa, if you look at the way our school curriculum, our school educational program is, some countries don't have as much as we do. The Western countries do not even have as such. So let's work on our program instead, and we may be overcoming the
challenges, the worries of
that
this
coronavirus has imposed
system
in our society.
Okay, thank you very much for your point of view, Mange Venashus. George Lika, maybe you will talk to us a little bit about the La Perseverance Plus primary school. How are holiday classes ongoing with the coronavirus pandemic?
Yes, thank you for this. The holiday classes started at the beginning of the month of August, and the influx of children shows really what parents have been going through for the long period of time. So mean that parents were already itchy about these holiday classes, and it's going on well. The first week, people have been sensitized as far as the barriers measures were concerned, and they make sure they wear their mask. They wash their hands daily. That's in the note here, they respect the barrier measures. And I think if somebody should pass around, you discover that Perseverance should be a school to be, where a parent who wants that a child should at least school in an environment where there is security as far as the barrier measures of COVID-19 are concerned is being implemented. It's been implemented
in the La Perseverance Plus primary school. Thank you very much for coming.
You are welcome.
And to you, Mange Venashus, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Vanessa.
That said, ladies and gentlemen, to you all watching us from every nooks and crannies of Cameroon, in the African continent and out of Africa, thank you very much for taking out these 30 minutes to watch us. That said, it was the package we prepared for you. Stay tuned to DBS Television.